Good evening, welcome back to my little philosophy corner. Hope you're well. For all those who are viewing, obviously there's thousands of you out there waiting for my videos every week. Lol. Last week, actually I don't know when it was, some time ago now I think, spoke about this guy Socrates and just gave a little sort of talk on him. And this week I want to talk about his pupil Plato. Again, one of the ancient Greeks. He's sort of one of the founding fathers, the Don Chi-Chis of Western philosophy, as you might want to call them. You know, these guys, Aristotle, Socrates and Plato, they're kind of the three kind of most famous ancient Greek philosophers. Let's have a look at Mr. Plato. So he was a student of Socrates, and essentially he did all the writing for Socrates. So he'd use him as probably like a character, as well as sort of, transcribing things that he actually said, so far as we believe. And he was born into quite a wealthy family in ancient Greece, and set up his own academy in Athens, which, as I said last time, still stands today in the centre of Athens. If you're ever on your travels and you go to Greece, go to Athens, you can have a look around, and you're walking around and you just feel, wow, you're back in ancient Greece at times. Anyway, so the sort of his one of his most famous sort of sections of the book, The Republic, that he wrote, which covered a vast array of topics, was the Allegory of the Cave. And so this video, I'm going to title it Plato's Allegory of the Cave, Ignorance and the Enlightened Mind. So a brief kind of description of that allegory was essentially there were some people who were born in a cave. They were kept prisoner in a cave. They were chained up, and they could only look one way at a sort of giant side of the cave wall there. And unbeknownst to them, there were people behind them with a fire, and they were projecting images onto the wall of the cave, and the people there were essentially led to believe that what they were seeing was the world, the real world, and how these images, what they represent. So if they were shown an image of a cat or a dog, then they would believe that that is a real cat and that is a real dog. One day, one of the prisoners somehow, not sure how, broke free, and he went outside, and he sort of, out of the cave, into the sunlight, and was like, it's all bright, and everything's bright and horrible. And at first the sun was too much, and he just was like, it's too much. But then he slowly could, start to see things, and what he could see was a lot more clear, and these are the true representations of the world outside of the cave. And so essentially what was in the cave was fake, as we, you can sort of get the gist of that. And it was sort of Plato's, the point basically is that the world we see is often not the true nature of reality, which kind of, it's a bit like the Matrix, isn't it? And Neo takes, I can never remember which pill he takes now. I think it's the red pill. And so he's taken out of his world, that simulation, and taken into the real world, which, well, it's not quite as pretty aesthetically as the Matrix, but that is supposedly the real world. How far down that we can go down that rabbit hole, because where do you stop? Is that really the real world? Can it go further? That's another question. But this kind of then later on in this allegory, the prisoner who was set free not set free, escaped, goes back into the cave, and he's all excited to tell all these people, like, oh, guys, come on, this is bullshit. This is real. What's outside this cave? This is real. Come, follow me. And they're just like, nah, we like it in here. It's nice and warm. And we just like being in our own little bubble and safe and cozy with these, no, we're not buying into that, all that truth and the true nature of reality. No. We like our little fake images over here, although they believe them to be real. So hopefully that's it in a nutshell. So a couple of things really. This guy obviously gets frustrated and he has to kind of then isolate himself. And that was sort of Plato's thing, was that the philosopher really is on this path of seeking truth and seeking the real nature of things and how we understand the world. So you kind of have to separate yourself from these people. And we have this in our lives quite a lot of the times. A lot of ignorant people really out there who you can discuss things with, and you get very frustrated. Plato thought that through philosophy and education we can all see the world for what it really is and become enlightened. Can we? Do we think that? I'm not so sure myself. Back when Plato was around, didn't have the sort of vast amounts of media, but and vast amounts of distractions and fake news, all this stuff. Obviously that's not to say that you can't seek to find out the real nature of things, but because there's so much stuff and there's a lot of seemingly skepticism about, well, particularly experts. There was the whole thing, when we had this Brexit vote, we don't trust these experts anymore. That people kind of maybe wouldn't want to go and perhaps read an academic article. They're probably happy to read something in the mainstream news, which is fine, but that can often be misleading. And so that's another question. Is it realistic that we can all become enlightened and we all have that desire for the burning truth of things? And, is there anything wrong with being a little bit ignorant to a certain extent? Plato would disagree. He would, particularly, he would advocate that we all seek truth, and we all, we have to. That's our sort of where the mind should be going towards the truth. But I don't know. It seems a little bit unrealistic. He did acknowledge that ignorance is okay if we own up to it. So the famous quote from Socrates is, or we believe it to be Socrates, is, "All I know is that I know nothing." So, if we're talking about the nature of reality, particularly for human beings, and we can only get so far, our brains are only designed, or, are only programmed, whatever you want to call it, to understand a certain amount. Beyond that, we have to just accept that we are ignorant to a certain extent. I mean, on the one hand, it can be quite humbling in a way, because when you think about the sort of, particularly the size of like the universe, or the minusculeness of the universe, of the nature of things around us, when you break it down to that level, you do feel, your little ego takes a bit of a bashing to a certain extent, because you can't understand everything, and so it can be a little bit humbling. It can certainly put you in your place. But I think within the realm of your everyday life, you can, or if you wish, try and seek a bit more, something closer to the truth. Not just accept what is shown to you, because often, whether it's deliberate or, can often be deliberate, it can be a misrepresentation of the reality of things. Obviously we can look at the media and places like that as an obvious example, where things can be distorted, so, to suit certain ends. So it is healthy to sometimes look into things a bit deeper and, seek a bit more truth. But I suppose, how do we deal with others who are unwilling to believe that what they're being shown is a false representation of things? So, going back to the prisoner who escaped and then came back, and you can imagine he was very frustrated when these other captives, they didn't want to believe, and they were happy to live in their own ignorance. I mean, firstly, I suppose, how much does it affect you? If it's something that, you're in your everyday life, you accept that, I can't change people's minds, I can't really do much about that, and so long as those people are not, I suppose, causing you any bother, any harm, then that's okay. But if there are circumstances where the ignorance of others causes you to be harmed in a way, then that could be frustrating. The kind of, if the circle of people around you have views which could be dangerous, and taking you down a path where you kind of get involved in the wrong crowds, then you might want to step away from those people if you're not able to change their minds. Plato sort of advocated that we can have discussions, and that, I think that's obviously stemming from Socrates, who was famous for his dialogues. Have gentle discussions with people, and try and, I mean, I don't know if you're going to change their minds wholly 100%, but at least maybe get them to think about the views that they do hold, and about the about what is out there in the world, whether what they see around them is true or whether that in a way is fabricated and not necessarily intended well. I mean, it's okay to accept that some people are not ready to open their minds and live in ignorance. I think we have to accept that because there's so many people who aren't, and but at the same time, you kind of, if they're within your immediate circle, you have to find a way to, especially if you're going to see each other quite a lot, find a way to almost be okay with that, I suppose. There's good examples, whenever politics or the daily affairs get brought up in whatever times that you meet up with your family, you kind of, it's a tricky situation to navigate, and once upon a time I'd have probably got into more heated arguments and caused more friction and more tension, but you kind of have to just walk away at a certain point and just accept that, okay, this person, I'm not getting through to them. They're not willing to change. Their mind is set. You can't. Sometimes you can't argue with stupid, if that's how we're going to call it, with ignorant. Or on the other side of it, can perhaps come across as a bit kind of elitist, I suppose. Plato was born into a wealthy family. He had time to sit around and discuss things and think about things, whereas, and kind of where he would advocate for you to separate yourselves from ignorance, that can kind of create that whole thing of, you think you're better than other people, because you're not, you're putting yourself on a different level. So I think there is a bit of a fine line there with that, because people will they're not going to like it if you keep trying to change their minds and keep trying to tell them that we need to look deeper into the nature of things. He also believed that philosophers should be essentially the people who govern us. So there was the plebs, I don't know if he called them plebs, but the people there, and then a sort of level of people of philosophers, the philosopher kings, or philosopher rulers as he called them. So again, it kind of does separate those two into different groups, and I don't know if necessarily that is going to help. You can't keep telling people that they're wrong, because we've seen it happen so many times, particularly recently. We had the whole Brexit vote. Everyone kept trying to argue with each other about, oh, you're wrong. You're kind of putting people down a little bit because they didn't think the same way as them, or they thought they knew better because, they're more educated or whatnot, and that doesn't really work all the time. This can lead to Plato was of the view that the plebs shouldn't really have a say because they're ignorant, and this can be quite obviously it's a bit unsettling, I suppose. A lot of people believe in democracy, rightly or wrongly. You know, they people want to believe that we have a choice, and you know, does that mean that we all have to be highly educated? You know, that's a different topic, but a different debate. Sorry, but you can see that it can create division in a sense, because you know, if you believe that the people who are ignorant shouldn't have a say, then that's separating you from those people, and you know they're probably not going to like it. And you can see that around you, you know, now where you have got a lot of people who, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say they're uneducated, but it's dangerous to sort of, you know, group them into those kind of things where, you know, everyone who votes a different way or thinks a different way they're not as educated as me. You know, so it's when you go down that route, you do have to be a bit careful, I think, because you know, certainly Plato, I mean, whilst he could go and live his life in a remotely, I suppose, away from society, away from people to a certain degree, you know, we have to, a lot of, that's not the case for everybody. You know, myself, I have to go to work, have to go about my life, and the same for you guys. You know, and you don't always want to cause tension or friction, especially in your workplace. So it can be a difficult path to navigate. You know, but then on the other hand, we do need to possibly accept that we shouldn't really trust those who are ignorant to really shape society. I mean, you can see this in just at the moment, the way things are, that, you know, look at who's in charge of the most powerful country in the world. it's you know, and a lot of people who probably elected Mr. Orange-faced man, they probably are quite ignorant and just, you know, they don't try and change their minds and focus to a bit more truth. And this is where Plato, you know, you could probably support the argument that apathy is quite a dangerous thing when it can lead to this. There's, you know, if you are educated, and you are quite apathetic, which, you know, we have seen a lot of the time, it can lead to these situations where, you know, sort of your life is almost dictated by those who are perhaps a bit ignorant. You know, and so that he was quite an advocate of being involved in political life. I mean, I think back when in ancient Greece that was a lot easier. You know, nowadays there's I mean, you can get involved in a local level, you know, and or try and do something on that scale. But in ancient Greece, it was a lot more. It was, you know, there's far less people. There was far less of the media influence to really change people's minds. So he could have, perhaps these philosophers had more of a chance to to really sort of, I suppose, redirect the ignorant to change their minds, you know. But yeah, that's sort of Plato's view on particularly political matters and ignorance generally. You know, what does everyone think? Do we think that is he right in a sense that we should try to change people's minds all the time? Should we let people be happy in their own ignorance to a certain extent? You know, unless it affects you. You know, do we feel that it's one of those situations where you shouldn't get too frustrated about other people? You know, it can lead to, you know, a lot of frustration when you are dealing with sort of, yeah, ignorant people in a way. I mean, I've certainly had it within the people around me. Sort of people within, well, sort of my stepdad. He was, you know, very much black and white, you know, old hat kind of his generation, should we say, and at times that was very challenging to deal with. You know, but at a certain point, I think you just have to let go and really, you know, accept that you're not going to be able to change people's minds all the time. But anyway, yeah, hopefully this has kind of been an interesting discussion about Plato. He certainly had a wide range of works, and I'd encourage you to delve deeper into the Republic. It covers a lot of ground in philosophy. It was a very influential book on Western philosophy, particularly. And yeah, I hope the next video I'll probably try and make about the other ancient Greek guy, Aristotle, because he differs from Plato in the sense that where Plato was more about you can discover the truth just through thinking. Aristotle was more his sort of, I suppose, way of seeking truth was through experiences, and so there's sort of that's how that kind of separated the two guys, and with Aristotle, that led to a lot more, you know, sort of he had a lot more to say on just general stuff, really, observations about the world, and you know that were grounded in experience, not just pure thought. So yeah, I'll try and do that. I don't know when, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you soon, I guess. Bye.